Välkomna allesammans till den här paneldebatten, eller diskussion är det väl snarare kanske, som ska handla om kommersialisering av läkemedel. So maybe we can start by a short introduction of yourselves and your company.
You have the mic. Or?
Go ahead.
Okay, Nikolaj Sorensen. I'm the CEO and president of Orexo. Orexo is a specialty pharma company. We have been commercializing products in the US since 2013, where I was leading the establishment of Orexo in the US.
My name is Renée Aguiar Lucander. I'm the CEO of Calliditas Therapeutics, and we're a specialty biopharma company operating in rare diseases. And we launched our first commercial product in the US in 2022.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Pierre-Henri Patin. I am the Vice President Commercial Operation for Hansa Biopharma. You may have seen the presentation this morning of Hansa. So my role, I lead the commercial team in Europe, so I'm in charge of all commercial activities within Europe. We've launched Idefirix imlifidase a bit more than a year ago, and yeah, happy to get any question on the progresses.
Perfect. Thank you very much and welcome. So to start off, maybe a quite basic question, but what is your view of commercializing on your own versus through a partner? What are the pros and cons, and what is the primary driver behind this decision?
So yes, at Hansa, we took the decision to commercialize. So it was a bold decision, because moving from an R&D company, very specialized in R&D, into commercial company, it's a journey. So we needed to assess whether we could actually get the capabilities and the resources. And assessment was yes. We are operating in the orphan disease space. So you don't need an army of people. You need just the right people, talented people. I think we have actually attracted these people. And the main reason is that you are your own, you have your own destiny in your hands. So we wanted to do that. We wanted to make sure that the product will be used in the right way by the right people. And this is basically the reason why we decided to go on our own. We have also established partnerships in other territories, but might elaborate a bit further. But this is the main reason, main driver.
Yeah.
Yes, I would echo that. I think it really depends on the type of disease area that you're covering. If you're in a kind of primary care area, I think obviously the type of resources and both in terms of capital and people, et cetera, is going to be quite overwhelming if you're a small company. And so I think it really comes down to whether you think you have the capabilities internally to build it, whether you have the capital to build it, and also then if you actually can, to this point, actually kind of, if it's concentrated enough that you can do it within a kind of reasonable amount of resources and capital to kind of get and have a very good outcome. So I think that I think is the kind of main reason from our perspective, which is why we chose to go to the largest market, which is the US, and actually commercialize there ourselves. And then again, we obviously have partnerships elsewhere.
So to give I could say the same, but I can give another perspective. I don't know of any R&D company that has succeeded to just continue to grow. Either you get bored, or you fail in one of your studies. So there are no real. I don't know. Maybe you know any R&D companies which is succeeded to continue to produce new products without having their own sales force. So I think if you want to grow the company long term, you probably have to either look to sell the company, or you have to build up some kind of commercial capability. The other very simple answer is that the EBIT margin that you often have on a product that is commercialized is somewhere 30 to 50%. The royalty rates that you can get are often 10 to 15%. Then you might get some milestones. So the economics, if you succeed actually to reach profitability, is much more attractive long term than having an out-licensed product.
Maybe you can comment, as you have been around for quite some long time in the US, how is it to be a Swedish company and to set up a sales force successfully?
But it's not easy. I think the US is a very complicated market. I heard Renée saying in a previous presentation it cost you about $100 million. And I went back and looked how much it costed for us in 2013 to 16. And that's about the amount. So this is a very, very intensive investment. So it's not easy, and I think there's a lot of difference in cultures that we don't really recognize. There's a legal and liability exposure that we're not used to. There's a payer system which is very, very different from what we know here. So I think it is complex, but I don't really think long term, of course, you have a choice of out licensing, but I think the way that most Swedish companies should dare is to find a pathway to get to commercialization, and hopefully we can have the next AstraZeneca, or as a Dane, I would like to see a Novo Nordic turn up in Sweden. Maybe that's Calliditas or Hansa Pharma. I hope so.
And Renée, maybe you could continue with, what is the crucial steps that needs to be in place to when going into a launch?
I think it sounds maybe a little bit cliche, but actually it all starts long time before you actually have the launch. If you're going to commercialize yourself, it's really important. The decisions that you make 2 and 3 years before the launch is really what's going to make or break the success at the launch. So actually, it is about getting the right people. It's about really kind of having a very kind of strategic approach to preparation. And I think it was already said, this is a very different market. And it has challenges that you really need to understand and be able to mitigate long before you get to a launch. So I think actually in terms of it's just another risk obviously that these companies take, is that a lot of times you have to invest ahead of even knowing whether you're going to have a product and whether your sales force is going to have anything to do. And I think that's key in terms of medical affairs. This is something that's completely new to physicians. They've never heard about this. It might come to a surprise of all of you, but actually treating physicians do not listen to corporate presentations. They don't read press releases. They actually treat patients. And so actually they don't know what's going on. And actually that's why, it takes quite a long time and a lot of investment, from a medical affairs perspective, a legal perspective, a regulatory perspective, even things where you have to track products, serialization in the US. So all of those investments you kind of have to do before. And it's really only the sales force, in a funny way, is actually the easiest part of the whole equation. And actually, because it's only if you've done all of that work prior to it that they have any ability to actually be successful once they actually go out and start talking to physicians.
And Henri, if you maybe want to follow up, if this is how you experienced a launch in Europe as well.
So, of course, very similar to what Renée just explained, you need to be ready. You need to prepare yourself, you need to prepare your market, you need to prepare your team. The specificities in Europe, also there is a European marketing authorization, actually is that you need to go into each and every country to get access, funding, money, to get the hospital to buy your product if you are into this hospital business. So this is actually, you need to go country by country. This is a huge activity, needs a lot of expertise, understanding of things, so you need the right people. At Hansa, we've been able in 18 months to secure access in 12 countries, including the top 5. So there are reasons for that, and it's all about being ready and being, knowing what you're doing. So it's all being ready, again, readiness.
Yeah. And how different are these different countries in Europe? Are some of them very hard and some of them pretty easy?
They are all very hard.
All very hard, yeah.
I was trying to find, is there an easy one? There is no easy one. Germany has been more favorable, but more positive, but they are getting into more, I would say, toughness in the conversations. Again, this is about bringing, making sure that they understand the value. The payers, they understand why they're going to invest this money into your product, why they could do something else. So this is all, making sure that your value story is significant enough for them to say, yes, I'm gonna fund your product. So you need to go one by one, and there are similarities, but there are also differences. So you need to understand these things, and you need the right people that can do that.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. And you touched upon this a little bit further previously, Nikolaj. If you just could describe one challenge, of course, in the European market, but also in the US, is the reimbursement process, and which you have been working with for quite some time now. Could you describe a little bit for us how this works?
I was a little scared for this one because I could speak for 4 hours and you would still not understand. But this is I think there's there's been a view that the US is easier because you go and launch and you have a lot of payers and people with good insurance. But I actually don't think that's the case anymore. You have to work just like Europe. You need to go out and you have to present the case from a health economic perspective. And the more clinical differentiation you have, the easier, of course, it becomes. But the US is, I think, consists of more than 2,000 payers. A lot of them are basically, it's a public, so you have Medicaid and Medicare, and then you have the commercial payers, and they, all of them have their own processes, so it's a lot of payers to work with, even though there are some umbrella organizations that you could shortcut. And you can say it's a little like in Europe. Some countries take a long time, but that's the same in the US. Some of the Medicaid and Medicare players, they take several years before they make a decision to add a new product onto the list. So the US is becoming a very hard market also from a pricing perspective. And I know it's easy to go into the pharmacy and say, oh, but the US prices are much, much higher than Europe. Mm-hmm. That's not really the truth. If you go and look after all rebates, a lot of the products, in particular when you have clinical differentiation in the US, or when you don't have clinical differentiation, so you have other products in the same category, the price pressure is extensive. And the actual price paid by the insurance companies are often at par with what you would see in most European countries. So the US payer market has gone from very little control before we launched, and then as we have been in the market for 10 years, we have seen that the control is getting harder and harder, a little like what we've seen in Europe, where now most countries have some kind of health economic process to review products.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And Renée, how has your experience been so far?
No, I mean, I would agree. I mean, I think the difference here is obviously timing from my perspective. Because obviously in Europe, you're actually not able to market or to launch or to do anything until you've completed these conversations. In the US, for at least in specialty products, because they're different products and they're treated very differently in the US. But if we stick to specialty products, obviously you can launch those products pretty much after approval. And until you have gone through this very arduous process, and I completely agree, this is not a walk in the park, and it's very many payers, and they will make quite random decisions sometimes. But I do think that benefit you have is you can launch and you can do something that's called medical exception. So actually, until the plans have decided how exactly they're going to treat your product, they will a lot of times still reimburse your product during that period of time. So even if it takes longer and you actually kind of a longer process to go through, takes more work for the physician, you can actually launch and get those prescriptions. So I think that's kind of been the biggest difference, really. I think the only place is Germany, I think, where you can realistically do that in Europe. So I think from our perspective, we were in the very lucky kind of position from a kind of differentiation perspective. Obviously, we were the only approved product. So this was really more for us an educational experience with the payers. They had never covered this disease before. And so our issue has not been so much contracting and rebating and kind of, the competition. It's really been more about like, what is this and why should we cover it? A little bit more like kind of in Europe, it's like, the health economic benefit here. Why should we even bring this on board? Why should we have it in our plan, et cetera? So that's been more of the kind of work that we've been doing. But I think we're very proud about the fact that we now have, over 90% of US lives are covered. And so that I think is actually an extraordinary feat from the company to have been able to achieve that.
And Henri, what's...
Yeah, just something. There are also positive things. In Europe, the day you get access to one of the large markets, there is the full access into the country. Mm-hmm. So in countries like France, UK, Germany, Italy, you have the full access. So it's a bit complex and you need some time. But the day you have, they say yes, and you shake hands with them, there is access everywhere in the country. So this is actually very positive.
Mm-hmm. We have been talking a lot about the US and Europe markets, but I mean, it's rarely we hear anything about Swedish companies or European companies that actually would like to set up a sales force in Asia. What's your take? What's the reason for that?
I mean, I think, again, I think part of this is what we've just talked about is in order to kind of be successful, you have to start with this quite a long time in advance. And it's very important that you actually understand the market, quite well before you actually go into that market. So if we talk about Asia, I mean, obviously Asia has lots of different kind of big economies to start with. So I think it's really kind of, again, that would be country by country that you would need to do this. I mean, Japan is completely different from China, even though both people would say that they're both in Asia. I think actually kind of going in and doing something like that on your own, I mean, if you look at who's done it, it's really only been Big Pharma. And actually, Big Pharma has done it even fairly recently, I would say. And I think it comes down to a lot about it's the regulatory situation, and it's also kind of really, you know, the cultural differences. I mean, there are clearly cultural differences between Europe and the US, but I think going to Asia, I think that is only kind of amplified in terms of trying to kind of manage something that kind of far away. And with those kind of challenges, that would be my personal view.
Maybe a quick word on maybe one. I fully agree with you on China, Japan. There is maybe a bit of an exception with Australia, because Australia is very more into Europe. I mean, the thinking of the people is very much into Europe. So you can actually leverage your lessons from from Europe to a country like Australia. So at Hansa, we are actually getting application in. We've decided to go into Australia. So, but yes, for the rest, it needs some thinking.
Right. Okay, if we look at the last year's pricing debate in the US, is this something that you believe will affect your drugs?
Nope.
Perfect.
No, so we are working with opioid use disorder. Our product is a reformulation of an existing product. We already have a pricing which is in line with the generic products. I think this is very much different from some of the specialty pharma products, in particular when you have an alternative. I think the unique thing that you're alone in the category, you're a little outside that process. But of course, the US have a lot of things they're working. In particular in Medicare, they have the new processes which is putting a lot of pressure on the prices of a little older products. So not new products, but older products will have a severe impact. But for Orexo, the short answer is no.
But that sets pressure perhaps on rebate levels from your side?
No, not really on us, because Medicare is, so we're working with opioid use disorder. Most addicted people are younger than 30, Medicare is for retired people. So we don't see that in our space at the moment, and that is because Zubsolv, even though it's a branded product, we treat it and we price it like a generic nearly. So we're a little outside that space. What is more difficult is to raise prices. You see more and more payers are putting a price caps where you before could actually raise prices with X% every year, or 5-10%. Today you're quite limited in your ability to raise prices year by year.
I mean, again, I think that, the reason behind this, I would say actually we're not expecting that it's going to impact us. But I think, again, the reason is obviously if you look at the kind of overall, I mean, why was this put in place and why is this such a big debate? It's obviously because of the overall costs to, overall for the healthcare. And if you are going to impact those costs, that's obviously what, politically you want to see, right? So you want to go for the very large categories, the broad kind of, diseases, where if you actually make a change, you will see a real impact on that. I don't think that it would make any sense, and I'm not hearing anything from any lobby organizations or anyone else in the US that actually says, we're going to pick this product that no one's heard of that affects kind of, 5,000 people. And I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense, right? I mean, they are going to go for the Humira franchises, type of area, right? Those are the ones, obviously, that's going to be, discussing this. And I think Big Pharma is going to have to think about how they kind of manage and develop their products. It's going to impact that. But I think from the kind of, 1-2 products, and particularly in rare disease or specialty disease, I think we're going to, it may get there, but I think in that case, it's going to take a little while. They're going to have to get through quite a lot of other categories before they start focusing on that, in my view.
And that's also your view when you're talking to private insurance companies. They are not a problem with your pricing and so on.
So again, I mean, in terms of our pricing, I would say that our pricing in that category is actually probably in the middle or low to middle. So I mean, we're not charging $300,000-$400,000 a year, right? And so I think that in that category, payers are not. I think again they're coming at this from a value perspective, very much in the US. It's really all about health economics, and it's not about kind of what does it cost just because it cost it. It's really about, do they think that they can kind of overall make money, save money, and that there's kind of a real value of the product. I think that's really the key that they're looking at.
Is that also the impression when talking to European authorities?
Yes. No, I think the concepts that we just heard actually are the same ones. They are looking at the big fishes, I would say. Being in the space of rare diseases, also it's very tough on the technology side, is also some sort of protection. They understand the value and they don't want to jeopardize the quality of health that they're going to offer to their citizens. When it comes to states, usually you sign multiple years contracts and they cannot go back to that. So we have this, protection around this. You cannot raise prices in Europe. That was never the case. So you can't do that. So the prices might go down over time. But again, we have secured, at least for Hansa, we have secured multiple years contract with states, and they will not change these contracts.
Okay. 20 minutes is really a short amount of time. Thank you for participating.
Thank you so much. Thank you.